VCs aren't really humans. They're sort of like robots with checkbooks. They're obsessed about the money as opposed to letting that be the side effect of the thing that they're building and trusting that they got the right people with the right mission at the right time. It's so incredibly important to be able to ask the right question. If we focus on the why versus how do I go make another $1 million? That's the wrong question. Most people don't think about any of this other stuff, and they wonder why they're part of the statistics that 9 out of 10 businesses fail in 5 years. They missed like 90% of the foundational pieces. People come to me with millions of dollars, terrified they're going to lose it. And generally they do lose it because they attract what they're thinking about. That's the biggest mistake out there. So we said, well, how do we solve all these things?
Your CEO, Kyle Brock, said that you're the best VC partner he's ever worked with because you actually understand operations and most VCs don't. Why is that?
I think most VCs look at investment through a spreadsheet, and I look at it through having been an operator in many different things, and then really deeply trusting the operators and not inflicting my will because I want to see a certain thing happen faster. One of the reasons that we have that relationship, and they'll say you're the best VC partner, when they say, hey, we need $2 million extra that wasn't part of the budget for these robots, I go, great. And like 15 minutes later, they've got a wire. I don't slow them down. And the reason that I don't do it and the reason I don't have to is because there's so much trust. They trust me. I trust them. And when you have trust, this is Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust. It's a game changer. Most VCs don't have the level of trust that I do. They scrutinize and they make it painful for problems. And they basically just crush people in the operation space. I think that that's the opposite because I'm not going to get what I want or what the investors want. We're not going to solve the mission if I'm putting a thumb on their neck.
And did that come from, I've built companies, had VCs, never had a good relationship. There's an R360 member, young guys, had 3 VCs in his company. And I said, you should write a book about that because I was not as lucky as you. But is your attitude because you've had VCs in your own companies and you've learned not to be like them?
I just asked the question, this comes back to martial arts. It's about what the relationship is going to be. And I've had all these different relationships with primarily human beings. And right. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, like VCs aren't really humans. They're sort of like robots with checkbooks. Maybe they have a heart or soul sometimes. But it was understanding that if I'm going to do anything, and this wasn't how it was in the beginning, 25, 30 years ago, but it's really about relationship. How do I want to be treated? How do they want to be treated? And then asking, can we do that together? And not saying I'm just going to inflict my will because I'm in a stronger position of authority or something. Because either we're on the same team or we're going to be adversarial. And I think a lot of times VCs end up becoming adversarial with operators. Right. These are my best friends. Like it's really cool. I get to go and hang out, and we spend more time laughing. And I'm thinking, why would anybody want to do anything other than this? And it's because they're obsessed about the money as opposed to letting that be the side effect of the thing that they're building and creating and birthing together and trusting that they can work through that and gestate something magical. I think people get too obsessed with the side effect and the product being the money instead of allowing it to be a natural thing that occurs because you've got the right people with the right mission at the right time.
I read something that like you put childcare and wellness centers in manufacturing plants and your competitors have to think you're absolutely crazy. But what do the retention numbers say and employee engagement?
So yeah, one of the things that you watch and you see the Google campus, and the Google campus, it's sort of a trick. They have all these things, the childcare and the wellness facility, and you can get anything and everything. And it's like, wow, all these benefits. No, they actually just want you to stay there and never leave. Like they'll give you a sleep pod so you can take a nap and then keep working, do your 18 hours. But that's really where this stuff exists. Maybe in high finance with the Goldmans or whatever, but most places, especially manufacturing, would never consider doing this kind of stuff. That most of the mentality of operators in manufacturing or blue collar stuff is get people in, get them out, have them do the thing. They're a cog, they're disposable. And from our perspective, and this is smart business, we looked at them and said, all right, how do we help keep them healthy and not only physically, but how do we keep them mentally and spiritually strong, which is their family, that unit. And so holistically, we looked at this as if we treat them well, one, they're going to be healthier, they're going to be sick less. And if we're making it easier for them to deal with kids, talking about childcare, which is brutally expensive. So we said, well, how do we solve all these things? Well, let's have a place where they can get really good food. So that's part of the formula that we have. Conscious food, not like Fritos and crap like that, but bringing in healthy, whole foods, like our new food pyramid that Kennedy just put out there. and then building a childcare facility so that people can come in, they can have their kids there. It's not going to drain one entire spouse's income. It's going to be part of the benefits. They can go see their kids at lunch. There's no stress. If they're 4 minutes late, that's $40. We took that out of the equation. And then we put a wellness facility through a naturopathic doctor, one of the best in the country. He's operating out of our facility. So he's there and people can come in and do all the preventative, whether it's acupuncture or IVs, all that stuff that keeps people healthier, and it's their families too. We're doing this stuff, and guess what? People aren't leaving. And so you go, well, that sounds like it's really expensive. No, what's expensive is turnover, retraining people.
Yep.
And when you have great people and you're taking care of them, and it's not just platitudes, it's really, they can feel it. They're not going to go anywhere else. And maybe other companies say, well, we should do that too, which they should. And so it's a cool thing to be able to say, hey, it's not just a manufacturing company. It's not just high tech, but it's about building a community and serving the community. And you're going to love being a part of this.
Wow. Now you're 47, right?
I turned 48 in
48.
25.
So no
Yeah.
family yet. And you've acknowledged that you've prioritized business over kind of personal balance. But what are you thinking about now or long term, or where's your head around that?
I had a thought, was driving, and I had this thought. It was like the midway thought. I was like, okay, so I'm like halfway to Charlie Munger or something, because at 48, there's this
Right, right.
96 or Buffett. And I thought, okay, what do I look back on and say, man, should I have done something? I don't do much shoulding. I don't think you can do it. I mean, you should all over yourself. It does. Nobody's happy about that. So I don't really, it's not a regret thing or an allowance for that. But I do, I look at my life now and I say, okay, let's say I'm at the halfway point. What really matters to me? And what matters is the connections. In large part, why I joined R360 was to be a part of a community of people where we're having real conversations, real experiences, connecting at a deep level,
Right.
and opening the space for me to build a family, because that's probably going to make people sad or like cringe. But the amount of Christmases and Thanksgivings I've literally sat at a Starbucks by myself is more than I've spent with other people. And I always say that it's one of the happiest places, more than Disneyland, because everybody's like, yay, I'm getting coffee, and I get a break from my crazy family, and the baristas are making like thousands of dollars in tips. So there's a lot of happy energy, and I would work on goals. But it's also, I look back this year and spent most of the holiday season by myself, and I think, is that really what I want the rest of my life? No, I want more of the messy. I want more of the laughter. I want the noise. I want the connection. And that's become really, really important. There's a shift. It's focusing on the mission, building things is part of it, but that's not the only thing. And that was really pretty much the only thing. And the relationships just got beat to like hammered dog shit over the years. And it was really unfortunate, especially for the women that I was involved with. They didn't get the best of me. They got the aftermath. And that's not how I'm wired anymore, because there's been an awareness that life is better with other people.
You hired a Italian truffle hunting dog called Dante. What was that about, and what did you learn from that?
So I had this idea. Some friends of mine had got an Italian truffle hunting dog. Legati is the breed of
Right.
dog, and I got really excited about this idea because I was hanging out in Italy with them with this dog in Florida. They'd visit me in Sedona, and I got obsessed about this. And then I started having this whole vision of going and truffle hunting. Like you go into the woods and find a truffle, or the dog finds a truffle. And I thought, man, this is going to be super fun. And it was interesting because my original thinking there was, I really want companionship, and I want a dog. And so I spent a year with this dog in training, and then the dog showed up in Arizona, and we had an absolute disastrous night. And I went, wait a second, like the dog lost it, and it was like it was an explosive situation, if you know what I mean. And I went, what am I doing? I said, this is not the right time. And so out of respect for this beautiful creature and my own life, I thought, all right, I need to be conscious and not force the issue. So I actually said, to the trainer, I said, can you keep Dante, for a while, and let me see if I can get to a place where this makes sense. And she was very graceful about it. So it, like, I was very excited. I spent a year waiting for this
Wow.
experience. And then I was also like being rational and acknowledging what is. After the meltdown in 2010, 11, 12, I spent a couple years with a guy named Frank doing therapy. He also ended up being my sensei, and we went to Tibet together, and we spent almost 2 years. This is right before I wrote Reinvented Life, with one question. And the question is, what is true? And you can go down and peel back layers and go deeper and deeper into that question.
I've gone down that rabbit hole.
It's a great rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
but it also never ends. Like you could just keep going deeper and deeper to this core, and then you end up in like quarks and nanoparticles and things. But being acknowledging what is true and not trying to convince yourself of something, letting your ego go or somebody else's judgment, forcing the issue. And it was one of those moments where I was really glad. And that's happened in relationships in the last year or two where I was acknowledging, yeah, this is a nice person and companionship is nice, but this person's also destroying my soul, or there's something off, and being okay with that and not worrying about making everybody happy, handing this dog back even though it was a cool dog. I think that that's one of the most empowering things, getting to a place where you can own whatever is and not what you want it to be.
Yeah, with the help of psychedelics, I've gone down that journey. And my conclusion is the only truth is the stories we tell each other. And so now I examine, well, what are the stories? I think in hypothesis. My hypothesis is X based on this story and these assumptions. And if the assumptions or something changes, I'm willing to change my story, my truth. And I'm humble enough to seeing all the things that I used to believe that I don't believe anymore because of the stories I was basically telling myself. And one of the reasons I'm writing this novel is there's 4 billion people on the planet that come from the same forefather, Abraham. And when Abraham lived, there was no Torah, there was no Quran, there was no Bible. And now there's all these stories that people are killing themselves over a 2,000-year-old story that, like, dude, you're in 2026, you know? And then the other thing is never being a victim. And like, I'm a very powerful human. So if this crisis, catastrophe, or bad thing happened in my life, what is it about the way that I'm showing up that causes, and not looking at anywhere else but myself, you know?
I think that's incredibly empowering, and it's also incredibly responsible. And when you ask, why did I do this? Why is this happening for me versus to me? Or that there's very different ways of approaching the exact same moment in time.
Said earlier, like, what is the universe trying to teach me? Like, what do I need to learn, right? Your grandmother sent you that thing. Well, shit.
I was pissed at the time. Like that, that moment I was like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She knew exactly what she was talking about. And when I stepped back and had time to think about it, all those things that you're talking about, it's so incredibly important to be able to ask the right question, because you're screwed if you start with the wrong question. You're literally either becoming a victim or you're focusing on the thing that it may teach you something. But if you really say, okay, let's start the framework, let's ask the right question to start with, then you can go deeper. It's like the why before the how. People go, okay, how do we do this? It's like, I used to ask that question after I was with Robert Kiyosaki 25 years ago. He said, stop saying you can't afford things. Say, how can I afford this? And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. So of course I started saying that. And then I started buying Ferraris and doing all these other things. Oh, I can do this by beating up the bank and forcing the issue. The thing I missed though was asking the question, should I do this? I missed
Right.
that one for a long time. So I was very creative. I could force the issue, and I was asking half of the right question, but I missed the other half, at least in that space. And that was really helpful, because what it allowed me to do was ask, how could I, but should I? And so it really set me up to say no for a lot more, as opposed to yes to everything, which creates a lot of chaos.
For the young people watching this, I mean, you grew up in a very humble environment, poor. You've created a lot of wealth. You've also written books about it. And you've said that, one of your life purposes is to free 1 million people from financial bondage. And that's not help people invest better, it's liberation language. So, what does financial bondage look like in 2026? What are people not getting? And what can people do to reframe themselves to create at least financial freedom?
My thinking is that most people have shackles on. They have financial shackles on. And for the most part, they're self-imposed because they're making a decision. Like, I don't buy into somebody saying, well, I'm from here, or this was my neighborhood, or the people around me. I think that's very debilitating, and it allows you to have a story and an excuse. So financial freedom is not about a pile of money. It's not about cash flow. It's literally about a confidence. So there's cash flow, there's cash, and then there's confidence. There's the three C's. And most people are focusing either on, I need 2 million or 5 million or 10 million, or I need 10,000 a month in cash flow. And they get wound up about that how, and they forget about the confidence. And the only way you get confidence is when you go build and you go through things and you have that philosophy that Henry Ford had 100 plus years ago. When somebody said, well, if you got lost all your money, what would you do? And he goes, I'd have it back in 5 years. And anybody that's gone through the process of building things, breaking things, losing things, you don't want to lose your money, but you also aren't, it's not like, oh my God, I'm dead. You just go, okay, well, I know how to build it. It'll be way faster and probably better. And so the idea is teaching people how to trust themselves enough to take action, to build the muscle. Like, don't look through the window at the gym. We're going to take you into the gym and help you build. The focus I have on people in 2026 is the idea around teaching them, mostly teaching them to trust themselves, to
Right.
go do the things. And it's not really about going and learning how to invest in a rental house or something where you just hand your money and just hope. Like, hope is not a strategy. Like, smoking opium is a terrible philosophy. This is about personal development. It's about mindset. Once you have that confidence, you're free because you're not sitting there hoping your money doesn't go away. And the idea of financial freedom is really that you're not afraid anymore. You're not waking up going, oh my God, what if my money goes away? Because, just like when you and I walk out in the streets, we're not sitting there going, is somebody going to hurt me? We have a confidence because of the training. And until that moment, I've had people come to me with millions of dollars, terrified they're going to lose it. And generally they do lose it because they attract what they're thinking about. This is a shift to where they're being a good steward of their wealth. And they also understand that when black swans happen, they know exactly how they would go and they would create, because that's what they've mastered. They've mastered creating wealth because it's really an idea, and it's about serving and creating value. And we have unlimited capacity in our minds and our hearts if we focus on the why versus how do I go make another $1 million? Like, that's the wrong question, I think, for most people.
You're also an incredible serial entrepreneur. You would be there. You talk about the foundational 15% of business principles that determine whether you're going to be a success or a failure. What are those things for people that are listening that are entrepreneurs?
So some of those I kind of touched on a little bit, just being willing, like, you go into something saying, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to bump into things, having a deep why, having this mission. Like, some of these things are, we've heard them a million times, having your mission and your values and your vision and the team. Like, I've made mistakes, and this is a huge one where I go, oh, I can just do it faster. That's the biggest mistake out there, just saying I'm going to do it by myself, even though a lot of people are going from 0 to billion in very short periods of time with tiny teams. The foundational piece is have your vision, find the best people, not the cheapest people. That's one of the dumbest things I've done, is hiring people, and they end up costing me money. World-class people don't cost anything. They just make you money, and they create, they do their thing. It's making sure that you've got some type of appropriate capital. I've blown up many businesses because they were undercapitalized, and I see it all the time, and you end up in crisis. And so these are some of the things that there is a foundational 15%, and it's saying, are these things in place? And if they're not, how do I get those in place and then launch? What most people do is, I've seen, that they're focused on, how do I get the right logo and the right business card and all this and cool swag, and they don't think about any of this other stuff. And then they wonder why they're part of the statistics that 9 out of 10 businesses fail in 5 years and that whole thing. It's because they missed like 90% of the foundational pieces. That was what unicornomics is all about. Here's the stuff. And then what's funny to me is when I miss one of those things,
Right.
and then I look at the book and I go, oh, yeah, we're having a problem because I forgot chapter 3. Like, I should just read this book like on a monthly basis. There's nothing in that book or the foundational 15% that anybody that's over 10 has not heard. It's bringing them all together. And then it's almost like a checklist. And then asking, if you're going to violate this, why would you do that? And for most people, it's because they're impatient. They go, I just want to go. I just want to do it. It's like, all right, that's like going and hitting the gas and then not checking to see if you have tires or fuel. Like, you got to check out, and maybe check to see if your brakes are on. Like, do you have brakes? That might be important.